Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Arts and Ideas. I'm Sue Swinand, and today my guest is poet, painter, sculptor, longtime friend John LaPrade. And he's been a presence in the Worcester art community for as long as I can remember. And John, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
You, Susan.
And I'm so happy you're going to share your work with the audience. He does quite a variety of things, which we hope we're going to get to show you everything. When did you really, were you a poet first? Or were you expressing yourself with words before visual?
No, I would say that I was doing both. What had happened was I started doing painting back in the 80s. I got a late start, was the mid-80s. And I remember what I had decided to do was to go back to college and to get my bachelor's degree. And I figured I'd get it in English literature, and I would get a minor in art. I've always been interested in art, and I've always, and I can remember specifically, there was a show that was curated by a Susan Strickler at the Worcester Art Museum, and the title of it was American Masters, Watercolors. And
I actually brought this book with me today because he had mentioned that to me, and it was a very significant show, and I think it had a lot of influence on many people. It was just something you had to love, you know?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I went to that show 6 times.
Really?
Yes, and I just couldn't believe it. I mean, not only did they show the watercolors of John Singer Sargent, but also Winslow Homer and Charles Birchfield.
Oh, yeah.
And I just loved it. I thought that was one of the
What
best
is it
shows.
you loved about it?
Well, I loved the medium, the watercolor medium.
The translucency, or?
The translucency, the way it was worked, the mastery of how Sargent was able to lift off the color. Homer was amazing.
Yeah.
What he could do with watercolors.
I also think something that you have in your work all the time is the spontaneity and the fluidity that you could see in works of master watercolor people like that.
Well,
You know,
thank you.
where the brushstroke is so significant.
Right.
And so then you went back to school at Worcester State?
Yeah, I went back to Worcester State College, and at that time, Doris Carter was the
Oh, yeah?
the head of the department, and I had been taking courses at the Worcester Art Museum. They were offering courses free of charge, it's full scholarship, and I signed up for a bunch of them. I remember taking your abstract course, and oh my God, I didn't take it once. I think I took it, oh God,
You were
9
a
times.
regular.
I just loved it. If none of you have taken Susan Swinand as a teacher, by all means, just take her. She's an amazing teacher.
So you started off doing watercolor, and we might show the audience one of your early watercolors.
Right.
And this, you know, has all the things you're talking about, the spontaneity. I love that you just let it go. You know,
Oh,
you just
absolutely.
put it down and do it, and let it go, and don't pick at it.
Yeah,
you know,
I have fun with it.
It's very loose and very fresh and very translucent.
Yeah.
And
I like to play with the color.
yeah, you know, I also brought, you were talking about watercolor, and you didn't have many in your slide folder, but I had these little cards that John sent me over the years for Christmas. I have more of them even. But these were all individually painted, and one of the reasons I thought they were so interesting is because they're so tiny.
Right.
And it makes a big difference when you paint tiny as to when you paint big. Like, if you'll notice in these, the little brushstrokes are shapes.
Right.
They fill the page with shapes, but
Yeah.
they're just gestures and touches of the brush.
Right.
And I think these are quite charming.
Well, I live in a small house, a very small house, so for me, it was very difficult to work large.
I think that one of the things that struck me in looking at all of your works over the years was there's a certain love for this little meticulousness and tiny caring about these little tiny things and really loving them, and
And you know,
it carries through.
I work on it on a daily basis. I mean, I like to, this is one of my quotes that I kind of keep inside my head, and I do it on a daily basis. I like to say that you don't go a day without a stroke. So what I do is I get up in the morning and I'll go downstairs, have my tea, and I'll have a brush down there as well as my palette, and before I even eat, what I'll do is I'll pick up the brush.
Your morning prayer.
Absolutely, my morning prayer. I think that for me, art is very spiritual. It's just a very humbling thing for me.
We should probably look at more things because the people are probably saying, well, show us some of the work.
All right.
So, so we have some watercolors. Now this piece was one that I've always loved, and I love also the way John uses kind of all over patterning and all over gesture and all over mark making. Is this watercolor?
Yes, it is. It's a watercolor monoprint.
Oh,
yes.
And that's why you were able to wipe out those little marks. The little, it looks like almost like fish or something, or droplets.
This was from my Annie Mus series. And these are pretty much almost, I used the shape like this, an oval for the female symbol, and I would use a line for the male symbol. And I did many of them. I like to limit.
So it's the synthesis of opposites too.
Right.
But it has a very spiritual quality, like a Mark Toby or something for me.
Right.
You know? So I love that piece though.
Thank you.
The little wipe around marks you can see are those little oval scratches that are in the paint. So those are watercolors. And then you kind of moved in to this series.
Right,
and
this
what
series
is this?
is my postage stamp series. And I started to cut out stamps, old stamps. So what I would do is I would buy stamps on eBay and mix them up. Like the last one was called Christ as a Theologist. And Christ has always been the symbol of the fish. And there's Christ. And this, of course, was the bird of prey. And and so
a lot of these pieces you had meaning and intention for what you were trying to say with them was you put them all together.
A lot of them have a lot of
significance,
significant
elements.
This had to do with the bird. It had to do with the sacrificial idea of the Christ. And there's the Christ. I mean, the Christ as a theologist. I mean, if you know the Christian symbols, where you would know right away that the Christ was going to be
So the other thing that's interesting about this to me is that you're using the watercolor background.
Absolutely, it's
and
like a staging.
So he's taking the watercolor learning that he had and experience, but he's moving it into a new place, and it's no longer the traditional watercolor, lighthouse barn kind of painting. It's moved into another realm of contemporary thinking.
Right. And this one here I called the ambush of the polar bear princess, panda bear princess. No, wait a minute. So the ambush of the panda bear princess. See, she's the princess. The main character in the painting is on the horse. It's virginity, and she's the virgin, and all these men who have the bows
and arrows.
Yeah, that's very phallic. So you get the idea that the panda bears are protecting her and her virginity. So there's so much more to it than just like...
Yeah, on the surface, it looks very whimsical
it is.
And very playful, which it is. and also it's colorful and kind of entertaining, and but there are a lot of other significance to the symbols that you're using.
Absolutely.
Very interesting stuff. Okay, and here's another one where I recognize a lot of characters from art history, and so you're really kind of quoting art history in all different ways.
This one is entitled Yard Sale, and I get a kick out of it. I mean,
You get a kick out of all your work,
I
though.
do.
Go ahead.
Well, I've got Christ in it. I can imagine
St.
Christ showing up
George or whoever,
right,
I don't know.
and then you've got the knights. And all these people showing up for a yard sale.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun. And
Were you thinking about postmodern ideas of quoting the past with irony, or was it just something that you loved the way this looked with that?
I just love the way certain things would look. With
So
other
it's
things.
very intuitive for you.
Right.
What's going
I
to...
would have a bunch of stamps chosen,
Uh-huh.
and then I would cut them out very meticulously.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was done with X-Acto blades.
Well, one thing I like is the way the images
Right.
integrate so seamlessly with the backgrounds.
Right.
In other words, he's cutting out these figures, but somehow there's just enough to make you think twice.
Right.
But
This one I call Swan Lake.
I could have
so-
guessed that.
And so what I've got is I've got the ballet dances, but as well I have the swans.
Just these trees are beautifully
those
painted.
are from postage stamp cutouts.
Oh,
as
really?
well. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you painted that. Beautiful. And now this is another postage stamp? or-
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and the stars were, oh my God, that came from a Peace Corps, $3 piece, and I just love the stars.
What
But
stars? They're birds, though, right?
Well, the stars are morphing into birds.
I see.
And what I call it is the Night of the Prancing Ponies.
Good title.
And what it kind of reminds me of a medieval wall.
Uh-huh.
And it's like in the garden, and you see at night something magical is going on.
Where the unicorn might
Right,
be
with
or something.
the,
And now that we're going to show another series, this was your graveyard series, which I
yes.
remember very
This-
specifically in your
was a-
foray into 3 dimensions.
This was a very productive series for me. I had been going out to the River Road in Bolton, and I remember I would go there, and there was a particular spot where there was a mill ruins. These were shoddy mill ruins, and I located most of them. I went to the Historical Society in West Boylston, found out where the mill ruins were, and went out there. And then what I would do is I would do these cemeteries and build them up with the fragments. Now,
We neglected to say that when he went to the mill, he was finding the ruin of the mill factory. You were finding all these little
millinery
objects,
parts,
millinery parts,
yes, right. And a lot of them had to do
boxes and boxes of these parts
right.
that
They would take
were
I spent 6 years doing this series.
buttons and all kind. Was that the place where you got the buttons?
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the buttons, yes.
So it was just in the dirt.
It's in the dirt.
So it was like doing excavation.
Right. I spent 6 years excavating, and when you continue showing more of them, you'll understand.
Okay.
And another thing that was very important to me was to use the mill ruins glass, the glass like for the cathedrals or the little chapels.
Oh.
What I would do is I would use the glass that I would find in the mill streams. Like I would have a gate, and I would have
Yeah.
like a
So it's like a little village of
Right.
cemetery. Was this anything to do with the AIDS crisis at that time? Was that a thing that was going on at the time? Was that part of your thinking?
Well, as a matter of fact, it was.
Yeah.
When I heard of a friend of mine who had passed from the HIV virus, I would do a cemetery.
Yeah.
Not specifically for
I
any
love this
given
one.
person,
Yeah.
but for
It's like,
in memory of the person. It was a very, I mean, these things I didn't do to be maudlin. I just wanted to get people
Yeah.
to get into it.
it meant something for you. And it really,
Absolutely,
I have
yeah.
this little piece here too that I happen to own, and it's a another piece that you made out of buttons from the same
Right.
site. So he's digging up these buttons and making these little, this is in a thimble, but you can see the tininess of these things, which I love.
It was crazy.
I love the
Yeah,
tininess. Yeah.
I did a whole button series. It was called
Now-
Tender Buttons.
Tender buttons.
Right.
Then the next series is,
The peeled acrylic series. Now this is crazy because what I would do is, this is a very large painting, and what I would do is I would work on a TV tray in my kitchen, and I would use the oven as well. The entire oven and washing machine, which are adjacent to one another, and the sink. And I wanted to do some bee balm. And the title of the pieces in the Hummingbirds Never Came.
well, bee balm certainly love, hummingbirds love it.
Yeah, but we planted bee balm and the hummingbirds never came.
Oh,
so
they
it's kinda
will if it
sad.
gets going. So, but tell us about the series. This
Well, what I
was
would
done
do
by
is-
peeling.
Peeling. What I would do is I would paint using acrylic on glass, and it would take me like 2 days for it to dry. I really wanted it
And then
to
you
dry.
would peel
And I
off
would
the
peel
little
it off
fragments.
from the.
It
and-
almost
yeah,
looks like
see,
tesserae, you know?
If I, like
Yeah,
in little
yeah.
spots like that, it would come out, and I wasn't sure whether it should be. There you go, poppies. This was one
We
where
have the poppies, the bee
poppies-
balm.
Yeah, I ordinarily would not paint
Make something that
right.
shape. So the process was making and dictating the
Right,
shapes and the
absolutely.
subject matter.
And the thing that's going on in the sky, if you can see it, are all these little white dots of acrylic. And then after they dried, I would go over it with like a midnight blue or a deep, deep blue. This one's called straw grass. And I've got the moon
It
in there.
reminds
and-
me of your later work. We'll remember this one when we see the jewel pieces.
Yeah, this one's called Riverbank. And I think there are fireflies in it as well. I don't think you can see it here. I think this one's in my
Live
attic.
fireflies.
No.
And this is another peeled paint. This is
Yeah, that's
for-
another peeled acrylic piece.
Lovely.
And
It gives
but I
a
like
wonderful
this-
texture, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. That's one thing I was going for, was texture, and
But I like the way the little peeled fragments give you shape.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're not
Shape and
planned.
brushstroke.
And this one here was one, I call it witchgrass.
Oh,
And-
it's like will-o'-the-wisp, though. It's like
Right.
some magic. You can imagine fireflies in this one, too, with the little puffy balls.
Yeah. And why do you do it? You do it because you love to do it.
Yep.
I mean, if you're not in it for the love of it, you better get out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget Sally Bishop one time in class. We had to go around the room and tell people why you were in the class. And when she came to me, I said, my name is John LaPrade, and the reason I do it is for the money. And everybody
bet
got
that
a good
broke
laugh
everybody
because
up.
I'm certainly not
I'll
in it
bet
for
that
the money.
broke everybody up. Yeah. Well, this one just has a lot of magic
Oh
to
yeah,
it.
it's a
I
big
really
piece.
like
That's
it.
3 feet by 3 feet.
No kidding.
So
Yeah.
they are quite large. Some
Yeah.
of these.
Oh,
this
this-
one's called Wounded America,
Ooh.
and that was in response to all the things that are going on in the Mid-East.
It's very apropos for right now.
Right.
You
this
know,
is
John,
a peeled acrylic as well.
this is one of my favorite pieces in your whole body of work that you showed me
Really?
today. And what I love about it is its power. but it's kind of tortured.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it has this powerful dynamic flow of almost like an avalanche or what do you call it, a glacier.
Yeah.
But it's as though the fragmented, chopped up pieces of the flag are like, they're almost like armies being flown down the river mountainside or something.
Well, in a way,
It's a very powerful piece.
yeah, I feel in a way that America is kind of wounded right now.
This
I
piece
mean,
is very
I think I
expressive.
did it after the Twin Towers had
Really?
been. Yeah, I
It's a
just
very
felt so
expressive
bad.
piece. The expression comes with the blood red and the texture and, you know, the roughness. A very powerful piece. We have a lot of these
Yeah,
pieces that are the little,
strictly abstract. This one was called Kite Play. They remind me of little kites, little yellow kites.
Yeah.
It was based on a poem by Gertrude Halstead.
I remember her
And
well. We did a program on her.
Oh, she's a wonderful woman.
The
A
kites.
wonderful, wonderful
It does
woman.
seem that the shapes are floating.
Yeah.
And,
I gave it to her estate.
No
I
kidding.
knew the children, and I was so blessed to have her as a friend. And I think that's one of the best gifts that the Worcester County Commission gave to me was the gift of her friendship. I mean, Gertrude, we would go out every other.
Interesting too how, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, we would go out and eat like every week, and sometimes it would be.
She was like 95 too.
Yes, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And
But I was going to say, interesting how one art form informs and feeds
Right.
and nourishes another.
Another one, right.
So the
It's so
writing
similar.
imagery, and then it prompts the visual ideas, which prompt the poems, which prompt the, nice.
Right.
Yeah. We should probably move along because we're,
Okay.
okay. Oh, this is a nice
this
one.
one's called Incarnation. I did so many things with this. I've used mica, gold leaf. You know, someone's told me that you shouldn't use gold leaf or rhinestones. Well, guess what? I think we're coming up to
You do whatever you
the
feel
glitz
like.
and-
Oh my gosh, we have 2 minutes, John. We got to fly.
All right, that's
So these
Primavera.
are
Yep, we're
more.
gonna go.
Yep. Oh, just
Now,
tell us
this
a
one's-
little bit about this one.
This one here was at the end of the day, and I was at Chris Cross's house, and what I did was I started the peeled acrylic series, and what I did was I just slapped some of the,
Wet, gooey,
gooey paint,
primordial
right.
ooze.
and I brought this into Nielsen Gallery, and John Baker just loved it.
Yeah.
And so that's a kick.
It does
and-
have the beginning of
yeah, and
creation.
this one here is Sargasso. I mean, oh my God! This is a painting that I first hate. I hated it, and then when I hung it in my kitchen, I would look at it over days, and
So the Sargasso is that's the little sea that's like the
Seabed,
center
yeah.
of
It's where all
the
the-
North Atlantic.
right, and it's where all the photo.
Plankton,
that's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Photoplankton.
It also reminds me of dead fish, though.
Yeah.
Like, you know how they throw a bomb into the water and all the fish die?
This is one painting that I didn't care for at all. It was probably my third peeled acrylic piece, and today now, I don't think I could part with it.
You love it.
I love it so much, and I can't figure. This is my pearl series where I started covering everything with pearls. This one's called Nothing. All that is mundane is sacred, and this is just a woman's shoe that I covered with black pearls.
I want to get into some of the jeweled pieces
And this-
because we're almost out of time. Now, this one is covered with what?
A gold leaf and half pearls.
Half pearls.
Right, but I love the use of the gold leaf. What I'm doing now is I'm using gold leaf.
Yep.
And this one here is my new work, where I'm using rhinestones and silver leaf as well as gold leaf.
I have another shot of this one which shows the gold leaf as it looks in different, as it pops out of the
Right.
canvas. And these are covered with gems, too.
Oh, yeah, this one here
I
is
love
called,
this piece.
That one's called We About Wisps in a Very Large Space. That's a line from Carolyn Fauché, a poet. But I like this piece too, Susan.
It's like the
But,
universe.
You know,
It's
it's
wonderful.
interesting because these pieces don't get into shows. And what bothers me is it takes forever to do it. I got to admit that my friend Paul does help me periodically. And trust me, without
One of those little
yeah,
dots
Swarovski crystals.
is a crystal. And when you see this thing in real life, it is so vibrant and glowing
God.
and sparkling, and it's
on
just like
black
looking
acrylic.
at the night sky from a mountaintop. It's
It's
wonderful.
wild, it really is.
Yeah.
And I've got mica in there.
There
I've
must
got
be
some glitter.
thousands and thousands of stones in that, little tiny stones.
Oh, yeah.
So it's that love, that meticulous little caring about each. Oh, this
And
one.
This one here is called, well, wait, I just have to.
It's okay. Just tell us.
It's called Fireflower.
Ah.
But it's very Japanese. It's Hanabi Kiku in Japanese.
Reminds me of fireworks
Yeah.
or a jellyfish.
You know,
a jellyfish.
I've actually had 2 shows in Japan.
No kidding.
Yeah. I saw better in Japan than I do in
Well, you're always
Worcester.
the distance.
And this,
This is the last piece we're going to show because we are out of time.
right.
And this is a larger piece with what, gold leaf?
gold leaf, black mica, mother of pearl, and Swarovski crystals.
Wow.
And this is the direction that I'm going now. Unfortunately, they're being rejected by.
Well, you know, it's hard to find the right place.
Right.
What gets rejected one place can be given a prize another
Right.
place. So
Abs-
don't be discouraged. Now, where are you showing your work right now?
Oh, I'm showing at Mary McGowan Gallery in Concord, New Hampshire.
And you can see more of John's work if you go to the Arts Worcester website. He has
Right.
a page on the a web page on their
Right.
site. And John, I am so sorry to have to stop, but
that's all right.
we are out of time, and
And
we raced through, but it was fun.
it was.
And thanks so much for
Okay.
coming in.
And listen, if you haven't taken a course with Susan, by all means, take one. I mean, she just infuses you with a desire to keep going.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time for
And
another
thank you.
edition of Arts and Ideas.